The royal banquet was already loud when Mara Ellis realized everyone at the nearest tables had stopped talking. She stood beside the long serving table with a silver tray balanced against her palm, trying not to look toward the center of the hall. She had learned that lesson years ago. In a room filled with powerful wolves, invisibility was safer than curiosity. Then the Alpha King's beta looked directly at her. "You." His voice cut through the silence. Mara stopped. "Bring that here." She obeyed, carrying the tray toward him while dozens of eyes followed. The beta was seated only a few places from King Adrian Vale, dressed in the dark uniform of the Royal Guard. He looked comfortable, almost bored. That changed when Mara reached the table. He glanced at the wine glass she had been carrying, then back at her face. "You spilled wine on the council table last week." Mara kept her voice quiet. "A drop, sir." "A drop?" A few wolves laughed. The beta leaned back. "Perhaps the palace has been too forgiving with servants who forget their place." Mara felt heat rise beneath her collar, but she kept her expression still. She had made one mistake. She had apologized for it. She had already cleaned it. None of that mattered now. The beta stood. "Tonight, I'll give you a lesson." The laughter died. Mara looked instinctively toward the throne. Adrian was watching. His expression was unreadable, but he had not stopped the beta. That told her enough. The beta stepped into the open space beside the banquet table. "Come here." Mara set the tray down carefully. Her fingers were steady. "What kind of lesson?" The beta smiled. "The kind you won't forget." He expected fear. Mara could feel it moving through the room, passing from one face to another. But beneath that fear, something else caught her attention. His feet had shifted. His shoulders had lowered. His weight had moved onto the ball of his right foot. It was not the stance of a man preparing to frighten a servant. It was the beginning of a controlled strike. Mara's pulse tightened. She knew that position. She had seen it before. The beta took one step toward her. Last chance to apologize. Mara looked at him, then at the watching Alpha King. She could still bow. She could still say she was sorry. She could still make herself small enough to disappear again. Instead, she planted both feet beneath her. "No," she said quietly. The beta's smile vanished. Then he moved. The beta moved fast. Mara barely had time to breathe before his hand came toward her shoulder. She stepped aside instead of back. His fingers closed on empty air. A murmur passed through the hall. He turned immediately, faster than she expected, and drove his other hand toward her arm. Mara caught his wrist with both hands, not fighting the force, only redirecting it. She pivoted, and his momentum carried him past her. His boots scraped against the polished floor. He recovered before he could fall. The laughter had stopped completely. Mara released him and stepped away. "You can stop," she said. The beta's jaw tightened. "I haven't started." He lunged again. This time he reached for her waist, trying to overpower her with sheer weight. Mara lowered her center of gravity and turned with him. His shoulder passed in front of her. She hooked his arm, shifted one foot behind his, and let gravity do what strength did not need to do. He hit one knee. Several wolves gasped. Mara immediately let him go. Enough. The beta rose with a furious expression. Adrian had not moved from the royal table. His eyes were fixed on Mara now. Not on the beta. On her. The beta charged a third time. Mara saw the change before he made it. His breathing had shortened. His movements were becoming less controlled. He was no longer teaching her anything. He was trying to win back the room. She waited until the last possible second, then slipped past his shoulder. Her palm struck the back of his elbow, and his arm folded awkwardly across his chest. Mara turned with the motion and locked his wrist against the line of his own shoulder. She could feel exactly how much pressure it would take to break something. She used far less. The beta snarled and twisted. Mara adjusted her grip. His knees buckled. "Let go," he hissed. Mara released him. He stumbled forward, caught himself, and spun around. His face was red. Someone near the council table whispered, 40 seconds. Mara glanced toward the hall clock. The second hand had crossed almost 40 marks since the first movement. The beta heard it too. His humiliation became visible. He attacked again without warning. Mara ducked beneath his arm, caught his wrist, and stepped behind him. She used his own momentum one final time, turning him until his arm was pinned safely behind his back and his balance depended entirely on her grip. He struggled. Mara tightened her hold just enough to stop him. "Stop," she said. He tried again. She held. "I said stop." The beta's breathing became ragged. The room was silent enough for everyone to hear it. Mara could have forced his shoulder farther. She could have made him cry out. Instead, she waited. Finally, his voice came low and strained. Please. Mara froze. The word had come from the same man who had promised to teach her a lesson. Please let me go. Mara released him immediately. The beta stumbled forward and caught the edge of the banquet table. No one laughed. Mara stepped back, hands open at her sides. She had not struck him after he was helpless. She had not insulted him. She had simply stopped when he asked. Adrian rose slowly from his chair. The entire hall watched him. But before the Alpha King could speak, the beta turned toward Mara, his humiliation replaced by something colder. Where? He asked, staring at her with sudden recognition. Did you learn that? The question stayed in the air long after the banquet had gone quiet. Mara felt every pair of eyes turn toward her again. She looked at the beta, then at Adrian. The Alpha King had stopped halfway around the table. His expression had changed. He was no longer watching a servant who had embarrassed a royal officer. He was watching a problem he did not understand. Mara lowered her gaze. I learned enough to defend myself. The beta's eyes narrowed. That isn't an answer. It's the only one I'm giving. A few council members shifted uneasily. The beta took one step toward her, but Adrian finally spoke. That's enough. His voice was calm, but the command carried through the hall. The beta stopped. Adrian looked at Mara. Come with me. Mara did. Not move. Am I under arrest? A faint surprise crossed Adrian's face. No. Then I would rather go back to the service corridor. The beta gave a short, humorless laugh. After what you just did, Mara turned toward him. You asked me to stop. I did. The answer made several wolves glance away. Adrian's expression tightened, though Mara could not tell whether he was annoyed or impressed. Mara, he said, I want to know where you learned that technique. Why? Because I have never seen it used that way in my court. She studied him for a moment. He was not threatening her. Not yet. But power did not need to threaten when everyone already knew it could. Then perhaps you should ask the person who started the lesson. The beta's face hardened. Adrian noticed. That was the first thing Mara had seen all evening that made her wonder whether he was paying attention for the right reason. The beta stepped forward. Your Majesty, this Omega deliberately provoked me. Mara almost laughed. You selected me in front of the entire court. You attacked a royal officer. After you attacked me, the room tightened again. Adrian raised one hand. Both of you. The beta bowed his head, but his eyes remained fixed on Mara. Adrian turned back to her. You will remain in the palace tonight. Mara's stomach dropped. Why? Until I understand what happened. So I am being detained. I said you are not under arrest. That isn't the same as being free. Adrian paused. For a moment, something almost like respect crossed his face. You are difficult. I have been told worse. His mouth nearly moved into a smile, but he stopped himself. Then his expression became serious again. Tell me where you learned the technique. Mara shook her head. No, Adrian's eyebrows lifted. No, not because I don't want to help you. Because I don't know what happens to people whose names become useful to powerful men. The words were quiet, but the beta heard them. His expression changed for only a second. Mara noticed. Adrian noticed too. Before either could speak, the beta stepped closer. You will be removed from royal service until this matter is resolved. Mara stared at him. You can't. Decide that. I can. Adrian looked at him sharply. The beta continued anyway. She embarrassed the royal guard in front of the council. She cannot remain in a position where she serves this court. Mara looked down at the silver tray, still resting where she had left it. Her hands curled slightly. Losing the palace job meant losing the room she rented, the money she sent home, and the one place where she had managed to remain invisible. But she refused to beg him. Fine, she said. Then I will leave. She reached for the tray. As she lifted it, something caught her eye on the beta's uniform, a small royal security insignia near his collar. One edge of the mark had been scratched away and replaced with a different line. Mara's breath caught. She had seen that mark before. Not on him. Somewhere else. The beta saw her looking. His hand immediately covered it. That reaction told Mara more than the insignia itself. She lowered the tray slowly. For the first time that night, she wondered if the beta had chosen her because he recognized something she had spent years trying to keep hidden. The corridor outside the banquet hall felt colder than it had a few minutes earlier. Mara carried the silver tray against her hip as she walked toward the servants' entrance, trying to ignore the guards watching her. She had almost reached the outer doors when one of them stepped into her path. That route is closed. Mara looked past him. Since when? New order. From whom? The guard hesitated. That was enough. Mara glanced toward the side passage. The Royal Security Patrol that normally stood there was missing, and two unfamiliar guards were stationed near a door that had never required a guard before. Something was wrong with the route. Not dangerous yet, but wrong. She turned around. Adrian was standing at the end of the corridor. He had followed her without the beta. You noticed it too, he said. Mara kept her distance. I noticed that your guards are standing somewhere they shouldn't be. Adrian looked toward the blocked passage. Explain. The patrol changed before the banquet ended. The replacement guards aren't following the old rotation. How do you know the old rotation? Mara hesitated. Because I work here. Adrian studied her. You said you learned that technique somewhere. Now you're reading security movements. I'm reading a hallway. You're reading a system. His voice was quieter now. Mara set the tray on a nearby table. If you want answers, stop treating me like a suspect. Adrian's jaw tightened. I have not accused you. You haven't protected me either. That landed harder than she expected. Adrian looked away for a moment. When he spoke again, his tone had changed. Then let's make an agreement. You will not be detained, questioned under force, or punished for what happened tonight while I investigate. In return, you tell me what you know. Mara considered him. And if I refuse, you leave the palace. She almost smiled. That sounds less like an agreement. It's the choice I can offer. She studied his face, searching for the trap. There wasn't one she could see. Finally, she nodded. Fine. Adrian waited. The beta's movement tonight wasn't ordinary guard training. Mara looked toward the empty passage. His first step came from a defensive system I was taught years ago. It was designed to redirect stronger opponents without breaking bones. Adrian's expression sharpened. Who taught you? Mara's fingers tightened against the edge of the table. A man who disappeared. Adrian went completely still. When? Years ago. He worked for royal security. It was not a question. Mara stared at him. You knew him? Adrian's silence answered before his words did. I knew of him. Mara felt the old warning in her chest. What happened? Adrian looked toward the corridor, then back at her. He disappeared after a security investigation. Before Mara could ask another question, Adrian led her toward a smaller records room beside the archive. If we're going to understand why your technique frightened the beta, he said, we start with the records. Inside, an old security ledger lay beneath a layer of dust. Mara opened it carefully. Several entries had been cut away. She turned the page. More were missing. Then she found a familiar notation beside a guard reassignment. The signature belonged to the beta. Mara looked up. Adrian's expression had hardened. Before either of them could speak, footsteps sounded outside. The door opened. A palace clerk entered, glanced at the ledger, and froze. Those pages, he whispered, were there this morning. The clerk's eyes remained fixed on the missing pages. Mara closed the ledger before he could say anything else. Who removed them? She asked. The clerk swallowed. I don't know. Adrian stepped closer. You said they were there this morning. Yes, Your Majesty. I checked the ledger before the council briefing. Mara looked at the torn edge. The pages had not been carefully removed. They had been pulled out in haste. Who has access to this room? She asked. The clerk glanced at Adrian, then lowered his voice. Royal Security. Senior council officers. The beta. Adrian's expression darkened. Leave us. The clerk bowed and hurried away. Mara reopened the ledger. One remaining entry showed a guard reassignment made on the same week her former master disappeared. Another entry had been partially scratched out. She traced the faded ink with one finger. This isn't random. Adrian stood beside her. What do you see? The reassignment pattern. She pointed to 3 names. These guards were moved away from the Western Archive, then replaced by men from the beta's unit. Adrian studied the page. That still doesn't prove he ordered anything. Mara looked at him. I know. She hated admitting it, but the distinction mattered. She had spent years remembering details because details kept her alive. That did not mean every detail formed the answer she wanted. Adrian seemed to notice her restraint. You thought he was responsible for your master's disappearance. I thought he might be. And now? Mara closed the ledger. Now I know someone wanted these records hidden. Before Adrian could answer, the door opened again. This time the beta stood there. His gaze went directly to the ledger in Mara's hands. Your Majesty. His voice was perfectly controlled. I was told you were questioning a servant about restricted security records. Mara watched his face. There was no surprise when he saw the missing pages. Only irritation. Adrian said, we found irregularities in the archive. Irregularities? The beta stepped inside. Or a servant who has learned how to make herself look useful? Mara's shoulders stiffened. I didn't remove those pages. But you were holding the ledger. Because I found it. The beta looked at Adrian. You cannot seriously be considering her accusations. Adrian did not answer immediately. The beta turned toward Mara. You should have taken your dismissal quietly. There it was again. The same certainty he had shown in the banquet hall. He believed her silence was something he could command. Mara met his eyes. Why were you so interested in where I learned that technique? His expression barely changed. Because a servant using restricted combat methods is a security concern. Then why did you recognize it before I told you what it was? Silence. Adrian's eyes moved between them. The beta recovered quickly. Because I have served this court longer than you have worked in it. He reached for the ledger. Adrian stopped him with one hand. Leave it. The beta's jaw tightened. Your Majesty, this is becoming dangerous. Mara almost asked why. Instead, she watched him leave. The door closed behind him. Adrian looked at her. You were right about one thing. Which one? He is afraid of something. Mara looked down at the missing pages. For the first time, the question was no longer why the beta had humiliated her. It was why her technique had made him afraid. Adrian's words stayed with Mara long after he left the archive. She should have gone back to the servants' quarters. Instead, she stood alone beside the damaged ledger, staring at the empty spaces where the missing pages had been. Someone had removed evidence, and she still did not know whether the beta had done it himself or ordered someone else to do it. That distinction mattered. She refused to accuse a man of something she could not prove. But she also refused to pretend the missing records meant nothing. By midnight, Mara had made a decision. She would look for the original security register before anyone could move it again. She left the archive through the service corridor and followed the old patrol route toward the restricted records room. She knew the palace well enough to avoid the main guards, but she did not know the new rotation. That was her first mistake. The corridor beyond the archive was darker than usual. Mara reached a narrow door and found it unlocked. Inside, shelves of sealed records filled the room. She searched for the year her master disappeared, moving carefully through the boxes. At last, she found a register marked with the old royal security seal. She opened it. The same names appeared again, followed by reassignment orders that had never appeared in the damaged ledger. Mara's pulse quickened. Then she heard footsteps. She turned. The beta stood in the doorway. 2 guards were behind him. His expression was almost calm. You were told to leave the archives alone. Mara held the register against her chest. I was never told that. You entered a restricted room without permission. Then why was the door unlocked? His eyes hardened. Put the register down. Mara did not move. Tell me who ordered these transfers. You are in no position to ask questions. One of the guards stepped forward. Mara shifted her weight instinctively, ready to protect herself, but stopped. She knew exactly what the beta wanted. He wanted her to make the first move. She lowered her hands. Fine. She placed the register on the table. Then take it. The beta walked toward her. You really don't understand when to stop. I stopped 40 seconds ago. His face tightened. Before he could answer, the guard beside him grabbed Mara's arm. She twisted free on instinct. The guard stumbled into a shelf. A box fell to the floor. The sound echoed through the room. The beta's expression changed instantly. There, he said. You saw it. Mara stared at him. Saw what? Her attack. The guards moved around her. Mara realized too late what had happened. She had given him exactly what he needed. Minutes later, Adrian entered the room. The register lay open on the table. The guard stood with one hand against his shoulder. The beta pointed toward Mara. She broke into a restricted archive, stole royal records, and attacked a guard when we tried to stop her. Mara looked at Adrian. She expected him to remember their conversation in the corridor, the agreement he had made with her, the evidence they had already found. But his face was unreadable. Is that what happened? He asked. Mara swallowed. This was the moment when she could beg him to believe her. Instead, she stood straight. Not exactly. Adrian looked at her. Then tell me exactly what happened. Mara took a breath. Give me the original ledger. Let me show you. Adrian looked at the register, then at Mara. You want to show me what? Why the guard's movement proves I didn't attack him. The beta gave a sharp laugh. Your Majesty, this is absurd. Mara ignored him. You asked where I learned the technique. I will tell you. The room became still. Mara had spent years avoiding this moment. My master taught me. Adrian's eyes narrowed. The man who disappeared? She nodded. He taught me how to redirect force without breaking the person using it. He made me promise never to demonstrate the technique inside a royal court. The beta's expression hardened. Mara saw it clearly this time. Recognition. Fear. Why? Adrian asked. Because he believed someone inside royal security was using the training system for the wrong reasons. The beta stepped forward. That is speculation from a frightened servant. Mara finally turned toward him. Then let the records prove me wrong. She pointed to the register. The reassignment orders were made before my master disappeared. The same officers were moved away from the Western Archive. Your men replaced them. Coincidence. Then you won't object to opening the original archive. The beta looked at Adrian. Your Majesty, you cannot let an Omega dictate royal procedure. Adrian's gaze remained on Mara. She isn't dictating anything. She is asking for evidence. The beta's jaw tightened. And if there is none? Mara answered before Adrian could. Then I will accept the consequences. Her voice shook slightly, but she did not lower it. But if there is evidence, I want it seen by everyone who has accused me. Adrian was silent for several seconds. Then he turned to the guards. Open the archive. The beta stepped forward. Your Majesty. I said open it. The command ended the argument. The guards unlocked the sealed cabinet. Inside were older registers, personnel orders, and incident reports. Mara moved carefully through them with Adrian beside her. She found one report containing the same defensive notation her master had used in his training records. Another listed 3 guards who had been reassigned within days of his disappearance. Adrian read the entries himself. His expression changed as the pattern became clearer. This still does not prove the beta ordered his disappearance, Mara said. No, Adrian replied. But it proves the records were altered. Mara looked at him. And you still don't know why. He met her eyes. Not yet. For the first time since the banquet, Mara believed he meant it. He was no longer asking her to trust his rank. He was choosing to follow the evidence with her. The beta suddenly turned toward the door. This hearing should be public. Mara watched him go. Adrian's face tightened. He's taking this to the council. Mara closed the register. Then I will speak there. Adrian looked at her. You understand what that means? Yes. She would no longer be invisible. She would have to tell the court exactly who trained her, what she knew, and why she had hidden it. It could destroy the quiet life she had built. Mara placed her hand on the old register. I'm still doing it. Adrian nodded once. Then when you speak, no one will silence you. The council chamber was already crowded when Mara entered. The beta stood beside the central table, surrounded by senior guards and council members who had clearly heard his version first. Mara felt their eyes settle on her clothes, her rank, and finally her hands. The same hands that had held a silver tray less than a day ago. The beta spoke before she reached the table. This Omega entered a restricted archive, removed royal records, and attacked a guard. Mara stopped beside Adrian. I did not remove anything. You were holding the register. Because I found it. The beta turned toward the council. And now she claims she possesses secret training that somehow proves my guilt. Mara waited until the murmurs quieted. Then, she placed the old register on the table. I don't claim that. She looked directly at the council. I claim the records should be examined before anyone decides what happened. The beta smiled coldly. Then demonstrate this remarkable technique. Let everyone see what kind of threat the palace has allowed inside its walls. Mara's stomach tightened. This was exactly what she had feared. Once she demonstrated the technique publicly, there would be no hiding her training again. But she also remembered the missing pages, the altered insignia, and the guard who had grabbed her in the archive. She stepped forward. All right. Adrian turned toward her. Mara, she met his eyes. You said no one would silence me. He held her gaze for a moment, then nodded. No one will. Mara faced the council. The technique is designed to redirect force. It is not designed to injure. The beta scoffed. Prove it. One royal guard stepped into the open space. Mara recognized him as the same guard from the archive. He looked uncomfortable. You don't have to do this, Adrian said. Mara shook her head. I do. The guard moved first. Mara waited until his hand reached her shoulder, then shifted sideways and guided his arm past her. She did not strike him. She redirected him. He turned with the movement and stopped exactly where she wanted him to stop. Several council members murmured. The beta stepped forward. Anyone can perform a trick. Mara looked at him, then described the first movement you saw at the banquet. His answer came immediately. You stepped inside his reach before he could recover. Mara's eyes narrowed. How did you know that? The chamber went silent. The beta realized his mistake. Because I watched the fight. You watched from across the hall, Mara said. You described a transition you could not clearly see from there. Adrian's expression hardened. Continue. Mara opened the register. The same transition appears in this old security report. She placed the document beside it. A guard leaned closer. That's the same notation used in the Western Archive reports. Mara nodded. And those reports were altered. The beta reached for the papers. Adrian blocked him. Don't. For the first time, the beta looked genuinely cornered. Your Majesty, you're trusting an Omega over your own beta. Adrian's voice was quiet. I'm trusting evidence. He ordered the sealed archive opened in front of the council. The original records were brought out one by one. The personnel assignments matched the pattern Mara had found. Guards connected to the Western Archive had been removed shortly before her master's disappearance. The replacements belonged to the beta's unit. Then another record appeared, bearing an authorization mark from the same period. Mara stared at it. Adrian read the entry aloud. His face went still. The beta had not merely supervised those transfers. He had signed the orders that concealed them. The room erupted in whispers. Mara looked at Adrian. He looked back at her, and this time there was no hesitation. He turned toward the guards. Remove him from command. The guards moved toward the beta. For one long second, he did not move. Then he looked at Adrian as though the years between them should matter more than the records on the table. Your Majesty, think carefully. Adrian did not look away. I have. The beta's command insignia was removed in front of the council. His authority over the royal guard ended there, and the investigation into the altered records and his role in the old security assignments began immediately. Mara watched without satisfaction. She had wanted the truth, not revenge. One question still remained. My master, she said quietly. What happens to his case? Adrian turned toward the council archivist. Reopen every record connected to his disappearance. Restore the missing reports. No page is to be sealed without my order. The archivist bowed and began gathering the documents. Mara felt something inside her loosen. For years, the disappearance had been a closed door she was afraid to touch. Now it was open, even if the answer waiting beyond it was still incomplete. The council members who had watched her humiliation the night before could no longer call her a reckless servant. Her evidence had forced the court to confront what its own records had concealed. Adrian then faced the council. No. Royal officer will use a public punishment as entertainment again. Any disciplinary demonstration involving a lower-ranking pack member must be formally reviewed. The rule was simple, but it mattered. The lesson that had begun with humiliation had changed the way authority could be used inside the palace. Later that evening, Mara stood alone in the royal training hall. She had been offered a position helping rebuild the guard's defensive training, but she had not accepted it yet. Adrian entered without an escort. He stopped several steps away. You don't have to stay, he said. Mara looked at him. I know. If you leave, your status and protection remain unchanged. She studied him carefully. And if I stay? You choose what you teach. You choose who you work with. And no one gets to use your skill because I ordered it. Mara smiled faintly. That's a better offer. Adrian glanced toward the corner of the hall. The silver serving tray from the banquet still sat on a nearby table, forgotten after the chaos. He picked it up, carried it across the room, and set it aside. Mara watched him. You kept that. Apparently someone forgot to return it. She looked at the tray, then back at him. That was where this started. I remember. Adrian stepped closer, but stopped before entering her space. What do you want now? Mara considered the question. For once, she did not answer with what would keep everyone else comfortable. I want to stay, she said, but on my terms. Adrian nodded. Then those are the terms. Mara looked toward the training floor. The first lesson is knowing when to stop. Adrian's expression softened. I think I learned that one. She reached for his hand. This time, neither rank nor command decided what happened next. She did.